From the moment Rome crowned him emperor, the empire did not gain a ruler. It unleashed a storm, a young man raised in fear, sharpened by power, and destined to turn the greatest civilization on earth into a stage for terror, spectacle, and something far more unsettling than madness. Long before the name Caligula would echo through history as a symbol of excess and insanity, Rome itself had already become a machine of power and paranoia. The Republic had collapsed under the ambitions of strongmen, replaced by an empire where loyalty could mean survival and suspicion could mean death. It was in this world, where trust was fragile and power absolute, that a child named Gaius was born into the most dangerous family in Rome. Gaius Julius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus, later known as Caligula, entered the world in 12 AD as the son of Germanicus, one of Rome's most beloved generals. As a child, he lived among soldiers on the frontiers of the empire, earning the nickname Caligula, meaning little boots, because he wore a miniature version of a soldier's uniform. To the legions, he was a mascot, a symbol of hope and continuity. But even in those early years, he witnessed the brutal realities of power. His father died under mysterious circumstances in 19 AD, widely believed to be poisoned, and his family fell into the deadly politics of the imperial court. What seemed like a childhood filled with admiration and promise quietly transformed into one shaped by fear, betrayal, and survival. After his father's death, Caligula's life became a descent into the shadows of Rome's most dangerous circles. The emperor at the time, Tiberius, grew increasingly paranoid, purging those he suspected of disloyalty. Caligula's own family suffered greatly. His mother and brothers were accused of treason and either exiled or killed. By the time Caligula reached his teenage years, he had learned a lesson few ever survived to understand. In Rome, power did not protect you, it hunted you. And so, he adapted. He watched, he remained silent. He survived. In 31 AD, Caligula found himself summoned to the island of Capri, where Tiberius had withdrawn from public life. Capri was not a peaceful retreat, it was a place whispered about in fear, filled with rumours of cruelty and indulgence. There, Caligula lived under the watchful eye of a ruler who trusted no one. But instead of resisting or rebelling, Caligula did something far more dangerous. He played the game perfectly. He hid his thoughts, masked his emotions, and gained the favour of the emperor who had destroyed his family. Those who observed him later would say that no better servant ever lived and no worse master ever ruled. Then, in 37 AD, everything changed. Tiberius died, and at just 24 years old, Caligula stepped into the most powerful position in the known world. Rome rejoiced. The people celebrated wildly, welcoming the son of Germanicus as a saviour who would restore dignity and stability. For the first few months, it seemed their hopes were justified. Caligula granted bonuses to the military, freed political prisoners, and honoured his family's legacy. He appeared generous, charismatic, even beloved. The empire exhaled in relief, believing a new golden age had begun. But something shifted. Only a few months into his reign, Caligula fell gravely ill. Ancient sources describe it as a near-fatal sickness, one that left him on the brink of death. When he recovered, those around him began to notice a change, not gradual, but sudden and unsettling. The young emperor who had shown promise now displayed erratic behaviour, cruelty, and a hunger for absolute control that went beyond anything Rome had seen before. It was as if something inside him had broken, or perhaps something had finally been unleashed. Caligula no longer acted like a ruler bound by tradition. He demanded to be treated not just as an emperor, but as a living god. He dressed as divine figures, appeared in public dressed as Jupiter or Apollo, and insisted that temples be built in his honour. For a society that had long balanced reverence for leaders with fear of tyranny, this was a dangerous shift. Caligula was not just ruling Rome, he was redefining what it meant to hold power. And then came the cruelty. Executions became entertainment. Those accused of treason often faced death, not for what they had done, but for what Caligula imagined they might do. Wealthy citizens found themselves targeted, their fortunes seized under false charges. Senators, once the backbone of Roman governance, were humiliated publicly, forced to run beside his chariot or endure his insults. Power, in Caligula's hands, was not a responsibility, it was a weapon, and he wielded it without restraint. Yet what made his reign truly unsettling was not just the violence, but the unpredictability. One day, he might reward loyalty with gifts and praise. The next, he might order the execution of the same person without explanation. This inconsistency created an atmosphere of constant fear. No one knew where they stood, no one felt safe, and in that uncertainty, Caligula found control. Stories began to spread, some likely exaggerated, others disturbingly plausible. Tales of lavish feasts, bizarre orders, and acts of excess that seemed almost unreal. One of the most famous claimed that Caligula planned to make his horse a consul, elevating it to one of the highest political positions in Rome. Whether this actually happened remains debated, but the story itself reveals something deeper. To many, Caligula had become a symbol of chaos, a ruler who mocked the very system he controlled. But perhaps the most dangerous aspect of his reign was not his madness, it was his isolation. As fear grew, loyalty disappeared. Those closest to him served out of necessity, not devotion. The Praetorian Guard, tasked with protecting the emperor, began to question whether the man they defended had become a threat to Rome itself. Senators whispered in private. Allies turned cautious. The empire, once united under a hopeful leader, now stood fractured under a ruler no one could predict. Caligula, however, remained unaware, or perhaps unconcerned. He continued to push boundaries, testing how far his power could stretch. He declared military campaigns that served little purpose, ordered extravagant construction projects that drained the treasury, and demanded constant affirmation of his divine status. To him, Rome was no longer a state, it was a stage, and he was the central figure in a performance that grew more dangerous by the day. And then, inevitably, the tension reached its breaking point. By 41 AD, just 4 years into his reign, the atmosphere in Rome had become unbearable. The very forces that once ensured the stability of the empire, the Senate, the military, the guard, now viewed the emperor as a liability. Plans began to form in secret, conversations whispered behind closed doors. Removing an emperor was no small act, it was treason, punishable by death. But for many, the risk of action now seemed less dangerous than the cost of inaction. The conspiracy moved quietly, carefully. Those involved knew they would only have one chance. Then, on a January day in 41 AD, the moment arrived. As Caligula moved through a corridor beneath the imperial palace, surrounded by his guards, a group of conspirators struck. Blades flashed in the dim light. The emperor, who had once commanded absolute power, now found himself defenseless, attacked by the very men sworn to protect him. In the chaos, he fell stabbed multiple times, his reign ending as violently as it had unfolded. He was 28 years old. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Caligula's wife and young daughter were also killed, ensuring no immediate heir could claim the throne. Rome stood at a crossroads once again, faced with the question of what kind of leadership would follow such a turbulent chapter. In the end, the empire did what it had done before. It adapted. A new emperor rose, and life continued. But Caligula's story did not end with his death. In the years that followed, historians wrote about his reign with a mix of fascination and horror. Some painted him as a monster, a symbol of unchecked power gone wrong. Others suggested that his image may have been exaggerated, shaped by political enemies and the passage of time. The truth, as with many figures in history, likely lies somewhere in between. What remains undeniable, however, is the impact of his rule. Caligula's reign forced Rome to confront a dangerous reality. The system that had replaced the Republic allowed for immense power to rest in the hands of a single individual. When that individual ruled wisely, the empire thrived. But when that power fell into unstable hands, the consequences could be catastrophic. His story became a warning, a lesson whispered through generations about the risks of absolute authority. And yet, there is something even more unsettling beneath the surface of his story. Caligula was not born a tyrant. He was shaped by loss, by fear, by a world where survival demanded silence and trust could mean death. The environment that produced him was the same environment that allowed him to rise. In many ways, he was not an anomaly, but a reflection of the system itself. A system that created emperors, but also created the conditions for their downfall. That is why his story continues to captivate us, because it forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Was Caligula truly insane, or was he a product of a broken system? Did power corrupt him, or did it simply reveal what was already there? And perhaps most importantly, how many other rulers throughout history have walked the same path, only remembered differently? Rome moved on. Empires rose and fell. Names changed, borders shifted, and centuries passed. But the story of Caligula endured, not just as a tale of madness, but as a reminder of how thin the line can be between order and chaos, between leadership and tyranny, between a ruler and a warning. And somewhere in that blurred line, his shadow still lingers.